All right. Now, you might see a blank screen, but you shouldn't see a blank screen. Your screen might be black right now. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully you can see this video. Here, let me rewind it a little bit. Hopefully you can see this video. But in my preview, it's there it is. Sorry about that. Now, on this live stream, I want to deal with reparations and why I believe that critical race theory is not really from black people. This is like, to me, Black Lives Matter organization. It's something that was not created by black people, by grassroots black people. There just wasn't. These are these democratic organizations and whatnot, democratic funded movements. And they just get a bunch of black people to participate in it. Okay? Because there's far too much money involved and media coverage and so forth for this to truly come from the everyday black person. I'm not feeling this. And I'm talking about the well-educated black person, grassroots black person, because black people in the grassroots are very educated. A lot of people seem to think like when you say black grassroots, you're talking about uneducated people with no, intelligence. Not at all. Not at all. This did not come from us. This is just not something that we do, in my opinion. Now, I was groomed by certain philosophies and whatnot. I was groomed on nationalism. So maybe it's just the way, I was brought up. But let's listen to what critical race theory is. I have a few videos, and I want to deal with the fact that it's pointless. If you're not talking about reparations, it's pointless. Listen to how pointless it is. If the sole purpose is not to explain to everybody why we're cutting black Americans a check, it's pointless.
The whole purpose of critical race theory is to provide Americans with a way to understand the legacy of racism, even though
they already do. Stop that. Stop that. I don't feel like this ain't coming. And like I said, there's too much money this being pushed. These people being paid to push this in schools, man. This is not coming from us. In my opinion. Now, maybe there's a group of black people somewhere where this is coming from your circle. You support the idea, hey, this should be in school. We want people to understand. But understand for what? If they're not understanding so that they can understand why we getting our check, then it's pointless. Stop this. This is more of that that servile, submissive, integrationalist, self-degrading. That's what this is to me. Trying to get people to understand. If they just understand what we went through, there won't be any more racists in the world. Let me tell you, racists know better than the average person what black people went through, our history. What are you talking about? They act like the only racist white people in the world are white people who don't know nothing about racism. What are you talking about, man? This is madness, and I know it didn't come from us. It did not come from no grassroots circles.
Is to provide Americans with a way to understand the legacy of racism, even though those stories sometimes hurt.
It's anti-American training that vilifies white people and demands they apologize.
The best learning for students about social studies.
Demands they apologize. That's more that Martin Luther King, I have a dream. Oh, white people, if you just learn to if you get to know us, you'll see how human and how normal we really are. How much like you we really are. Ain't nobody fishing for no apology. You're not talking about the grassroots black people. And I'm tired of these puppets all over the media trying to represent the everyday black person. No, you do not. Ain't nobody walking up in no cafe doing no sit-in up in here. This is another version of a flipping sit-in to me. Right now, let's continue.
That vilifies white people and demands they apologize.
What an apology gonna do for me? You know what do something for me? A check. Nobody asking for no apology. What is you talking about, man? People be on the news talking so reckless, and I gotta cover it on this channel because it drives me nuts.
The best learning for students about social studies and about our democracy and our country is the learning where students can really grapple with the issues and really come to a deeper understanding of how our past informs our present.
All of this.
Now stop that. Ain't nobody oblivious to racism. Everybody know. This is the information age. This is why this infuriates me. I was around when there was no internet. And it was at that time, that is when what you taught in the public schools is really what mattered. We have been in the computer age for a while now. Information is at the click of a mouse. Everybody, ain't nobody oblivious to racism and slavery. You know how interested most people are in stuff like this, and they do in-depth research into this type of stuff. Stop it. This is all just babble, procrastination, just to avoid cutting us our check. I don't want to hear none of this goofy babble. Ain't nobody trying to push no curriculum to make people understand in no public school system. Stop this, man.
This revisionist, woke curriculum, you are not going to do this to our children.
Teachers across the country are caught in the middle.
And what this is just a way to get white America, a certain portion of white America, to lash out against black people. This is not at its root. Its design and its purpose is just to cause racial tension. Get a bunch of paid puppets to pretend like, oh, I speak for the black masses. We want so bad for this to be in the public school system. Now, I agree that accurate history should be taught. Yes. For these different police units that had to be removed, destroyed, dismantled because of how unconstitutional they were, because they were created to target black people and terrorize black people, killed many black people. Many of these police units around the country, people are well aware of this stuff. They're well aware of this stuff. And if we're going to push the knowledge of history, just push it as history. Just inform them, yeah, these police units were created to target black American, African American communities. But no, you want to frame it as critical race theory, right? You want to put a black face on the truth. Like, hey, this is black stuff. The knowledge of what actually happened in history. Because the public school system, they don't include the entirety of history for the most part. They leave out a lot of black issues. But if you're going to actually tell it and include some of these issues, why would you frame it, say, hey, like this is black stuff and this is intended to make you feel the guilt and go on an emotional roller coaster There was this woman who wrote a book that's included in their curriculum, the critical race theory curriculum, that literally said that the goal was to get white Americans to be at one emotionally with their guilt or something goofy like that. Stop this, man. Stop this. Teach the truth. Stop framing it as black stuff. So you're just literally trying to antagon. That's why I know this did not come from us.
Of the latest flashpoint in America's culture war, critical race theory. So what exactly is it?
Don't get me wrong. The things that they point out in critical race theory, if it's true, it's true. If it's actual history, it's actual history. And if it's currently being left out of the public school system, it's left out of the public school system. So just include it into the curriculum. Stop framing it. They always trying to racify everything. Oh, we're about to teach you about some black stuff and how African Americans were targeted by the police force, by the American government, by a political system, by our laws. Goofball, just put it in the book. No, they have to say, oh, this is some black stuff, and oh, we're about to tell you white people how evil you are and how worthless your existence. Yeah, that's what this is. This is classic democratic pampering, babying, goofball nonsense, agitation, trying to project black people as childlike. Get out of here with this goofball nonsense. Classic liberal goofiness. It's got to put a black face on everything.
Why is there a push to ban it in schools?
Critical race theory is a body of ideas and a set of approaches to understanding the history and the present of American society.
See how they just frame the truth, frame actual history. It's emotional roller coaster. We want understanding. Get out of here, man. Who is this dude anyway? Kendall Thomas. I don't know this dude. Listen, during the 50s and 60s, I had family members, full disclosure, I had family members who were members of the Nation of Islam. Some of those members of the Nation of Islam broke from the Nation of Islam. Some stayed with them, and they got into nationalism, and they primarily focused on like Dr. John Henrik Clark, Dr. Amos Wilson. It's a lot of nationalism type stuff. So I feel like I can't speak for all black people, because I know there are some black people who co-sign with this. I know there are many of them who say, yeah, we should. Let's get in the public school system. Oh, there's a lot of them. Let's get in the public schools. Let's get them to understand us. People, they understand everything. They understand everything. This is just a way to frame it and put a black face on it. This is just to cause racial tension. And because look, what's the purpose? What does this do for black people? You just cross your finger and let's hope that once they know what happened in history, that they don't feel racism anymore in their hearts. Is that what this is? That don't guarantee nothing. A check guarantees something. Okay, let's just talk about what's the point in talking about all the horror that we've been through if you ain't cutting a check? What's the point? Oh, we want understanding. Shut up. Shut up, man. That's goofy nonsense. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I have to use this channel to let loose. I got to use this channel to let loose. I can't take it no more. Sitting back watching this, and listen, I've been creating YouTube videos over 2 decades. Many people know me from the very beginning, around 2007. I started out covering stuff like this for years. And then I broke away, and now I'm coming back because I can't take it no more. It's getting that crazy.
That looks at the ways in which racial unfairness have been woven into the fabric of our institutions.
For what? For what? And there are many people who already are aware of exactly how this is done. Already you have, for the longest time, before critical race theory came onto the scene, you already had African American studies. Did you not? They taught this stuff essentially in African American studies. So while it wasn't in the public schools, like the elementaries and the high schools, they were informed of these types of things in their college life. Yes, they were. I took African American studies in college. It was mostly white people. Man, what is you talking about? And we talked about all kinds of stuff. The civil rights movement, how it had a negative impact economically on black families, how black families were targeted, how they still target black families and don't like to show black families in the media. What is y'all talking about? Ain't nobody fishing for no understanding. We fishing for a check.
Society that looks at the ways in which racial unfairness have been woven into the fabric of our institutions.
In other words, critical race theory, or CRT for short, is a legal academic framework centered on the idea that racism is systemic. It first started to coalesce in the 1970s when Black, Hispanic, and Asian legal scholars were researching the persistence of inequality despite the landmark legal victories of this.
Oh my God, shut up. Stop this. Stop it. Simply put all of this critical race theory, black history, put it in the textbook. Just put it in the textbook. Stop framing it as something. Oh, here comes critical race theory, race. Goofballs. Just because you include black people in the history book does not mean you need to. Why are you always making a spectacle out of race? This is not the grassroots black people. We don't do this, man. Just put it in the book. Like I said, just put what you already have in your college system in African Americans. That's basically all they're doing, people. They might be adding a few more things. Basically what they're pushing to do is to put African American studies into your high school, into your elementary. Correct me if I'm wrong. Man, am I the only one annoyed by this? I'm annoyed by this. And listen, if you ain't from my school of thought, you probably won't understand. So I plead for understanding from people. I come from a certain school of thought. My uncles were deep into the teachings of Elijah Muhammad. I come from that school of thought. And if you know about Dr. Amos Wilson, I come from that school of thought. So this irks me. This irks the living hell out of me, man. This ain't coming from us. Black Lives Matter was invented by white people, or a certain sect of white people. Let me say that, if I'm not mistaken. I know it's financed, George Soros. These millionaires, billionaires, if they're coming up with this and financing this, what makes you think this is something like the Black Panther Party, which did come from the grassroots of the black population? No. It's just a bunch of goofy nonsense pandering, you know what I'm saying? Trying to stoke people's emotions. It's goofy. Cut the check. Again, what are you teaching this for? Oh, let me tell you how horrible our ancestors were to black people's ancestors. Just to give you a feeling inside. Just to stoke your emotions. No check. This is supposed to replace a check. Oh, well, look, we have understanding, don't we? No. Cut my check, man. You know what I'm saying? Stop playing games. Black people, listen, we got to stop playing games and walking around all ashamed of our history. All ashamed. We don't want to ask for nothing. I don't want nothing. Dude, Black Americans, our ancestors were robbed beyond comparison. You can't compare it to nothing else, to no other robbery. The amount of wealth a person can accumulate from a lifetime of physical and mental labor is almost endless. There's no telling where Black America would be today if our institutions were not targeted for destruction by our own government. That debt still exists. That government still exists. Those people still exist. We are owed a debt. Let's stop playing games with these fake organizations. This ain't from us.
Civil rights era.
The legal scholars undertook a set of analyses and investigations that were aimed at trying to make sense of the puzzling persistence of racism in our legal system, in our political system, in our economy.
CRT.
Man, stop this. We all understand. We all fully understand. In Europe, white people were in very bad shape. You had the Black Plague. They were very poor. They were going through some seriously hard times. They got to the point where they developed the mentality of kill or be killed. And when you find somebody somewhere with something, take it from them. This is explained clearly in several books. And where even in the earliest times, generation after generation, during the caveman days as well, they had to be smart about how they plant life, because they could only grow food certain times of the year. So they went long stretches where they had no food. You got to be careful. You can't have many kids. You know, it's kill or be killed. So they came out of Europe with this mentality that was reinforced by extreme, immense poverty and a lack of resources. That's why they left Europe and started sucking up everybody else flipping resources, man. The world ain't hard to understand. Everybody understand history of what happened. So they developed a real inhumane mentality in order to execute that. They wanted to rob, enslave a people and benefit from their labor. So in order to do that, yeah, it can be lucrative. But in order to do that, you have to come up with propaganda. You have to get the population to believe certain things about those people who are enslaved. And make the goal is to make the people who are enslaved feel like it's God's will. Feel like it's natural. It's a natural road that it was destined for you. You were made for this. And they have to make the people who enslave those people feel like, again, this is God's will. This is what God put it. That's why they taught Adam and Eve were white in the Bible. And here in the South, in the United States, they taught that Adam and Eve were white, were the first white people, and that black people were pre-Adamites, described in the Bible as the beasts of the field. Remember, in the Bible, God created the beasts of the field first, and then created Adam, and then gave Adam power and dominion over the beasts of the field. They're saying that was a description of black people who were what? Not truly human, because they didn't come from Adam. They taught this in the South, here in the United States. Again, add that on to why we are owed a debt. You don't teach no sick nonsense like that to people. Yeah, you're going to create a population of racist lunatics, fool. And they flood the police departments and all kinds of institutions, man. We are owed a debt, not only that, and land. We need to have the option to live in our own nation. Stop playing dumb like we're not entitled to, like we don't deserve it. Wow. You see, Generation after generation being ashamed. Oh, I don't want to ask for nothing. All this cool nonsense. It's got to go.
It's been studied in fields like sociology, economics, and political science. It's been used to examine issues such as housing and educational segregation, unconscious bias, and criminal justice reform.
Contrary to what often critics portray as sort of judging people intrinsically as being racist or not, or holding people responsible for, slavery in the past, it is actually to open up a conversation of how we all inherit and live in a society sort of beyond our choosing. Right? We didn't choose.
Did you hear what he said? Okay. Okay, let me rewind it. Listen to what he says.
Bias and criminal justice reform.
Contrary to what often critics portray as sort of judging people intrinsically as being racist or not, or holding people responsible for, slavery in the past, it is actually...
See, he's saying this is not about holding people responsible for slavery in the past. That's what he just said. Oh, that's not what this is about. This is not about holding people responsible for slavery in the past. Okay, so what is it about?
To open up a conversation of how we all inherit and live in a society sort of beyond our choosing. Right? We didn't choose where we were born or what racial group we were part of, and yet we have this common history. How do we understand that history? What does it mean for us? Those are the sorts of questions that critical race theorists were trying to grapple with.
That's more goofiness. Oh, we just want more understanding and what it means to us as a black person, as a white person, as an Asian, or what we've been through, what it means to us. Shut up, man. This did not come from black people. No, we're not out here trying to get people to understand. We out here to get a check. Stop with this. And all of this critical race theory nonsense is for them to say, hey, look, we did give you reparations. Look at the understanding critical race theory in the public schools, huh? Nah, no. Nobody got a problem with everybody else getting reparations. Not only reparations, we just giving money to Ukrainians, just people who not even citizens. Hey, just take it, billions and trillions. Nobody complaining. I don't want to hear no complaints for repaying a debt like this. And y'all know this is the facts. You know it. Even the people that are against black Americans receiving reparations, you know that we are owed it. And I don't want to hear this, oh, you're just lazy, want a handout. I've been working for over 2 decades, nonstop. Know what you talking about? You want to put stipulations on it? Hey, you have to work for a full year before you get your reparations. Who cares? Even if they are jobless, even if they want to blow it, who cares? Most likely, white businesses are going to benefit most if we get reparations. Because most black people, they're not going to invest in black businesses. They're going to go out to Walmart. They're going to go out to here and there. And it's going to be an economic boom. What are you talking about? You're not going to feel it. So I don't want to hear nothing. Again, you got all these people getting reparations, have gotten reparations. Japanese, the Indians, Native Americans here. This group, that group. I don't want to hear no complaints.
The racial reckoning spurred by the police killing of George Floyd brought the decades-old framework back into the spotlight, as some schools sought to implement reforms that better address race in classrooms.
I think the thing that critical race theory would add to that conversation is that we not sort of confine that horrific example to Derek Chauvin, but to think about how, well, there were other...
And you know what? Like, what are they talking about? In the public school system, I'm 45 years old, born 1977. I remember in history class, we briefly went over slavery in America. Yes, we did. They mentioned slavery. They mentioned the fact that they came here and stole this land. Yes, they did. I remember my teacher, how she described it. She described it as there were natives here, and she said, we came over and pushed them off the land. And she sort of had these stick figures in her hands. And she would have one stick figure push the other off of this sort of surface. But she clearly explained it. I remember seeing it in our textbook. I remember seeing the mentioning of the civil rights movement and what happened in the public school system. This is just a way for them to stoke racial tension. I'm telling y'all, there is an element in society where they're trying to create a race war. I know that might sound right-wingish. Excuse me. I understand that. I'm not into all that. But I'm just telling you what I see, what I feel. Because this goofball nonsense, it don't come from us. We not out here like that. In fact, the civil rights movement started as black people trying to get equal funding, which made more sense. Like, hey, just give us our proper funds where we can build our infrastructure for our schools, update our books and stuff like that. And it was government paid black folk who was financed, incentivized by the government to tell them to go out here and instead push for integration. You see, I got a problem with that. Now I'm tired of this. No, let's finish this. Let's finish this.
Law enforcement officers present, including officers of color, who stood idly by. And so that pushes us to think about, this phenomenon as not simply one of, racism by whites against blacks, right? I mean, it makes us think more critically, more engaged, more seriously around, well, why do these practices happen?
No, stop trying to take attention away from black Americans. Other groups came here by choice. They didn't have their labor exploited and stolen. Their labor stolen from them generation after generation. This economy was based on that. Robbing people's lifetime of not only labor, but their inventions. Anything technological that they invent, you're not allowed to get a patent. Who get it? Your master, your slave master get the patent. It's the depth at which black people were robbed. Stop comparing us to immigrants who came over here by choice, were not enslaved. What are you talking about, man? Again, this did not come from us, this goofball nonsense. This is more Democrat, chill, goofy nonsense, man. Yes, cut the check. Stop talking dumb. How long we been on here? You know how much time I got here? Man, I got a lot to deal with. Oh, I only been on here for a half hour. Hasn't been long at all. Let's continue.
Engage more seriously around, well, why do these practices happen?
The push against CRT gained steam under former President Trump, when he directed federal agencies to end any diversity trainings related to critical race theory.
No, you know what I believe we would support en masse is if the only reason you try to push this understanding of history to the population is so they understand clearly why we are being cut a check. That's the only time it makes sense. It's the only time it makes sense. Listen, understand. If black people benefited from their labor, that would touch the life of every black American alive today. It would have touched our life in some way, shape, or form because we had too many things. We had banks, and we had everything, doctors, everything that any nation would require. They were about to go into business with other countries. The Black Wall Streets, it was multiple Black Wall Streets, were about to go into business with other entire countries as complete economies. That's why they were targeted for destruction, because they were so successful. Destroyed by this same government. This ain't rocket science. You're not going to tell me that other groups deserve reparations and we don't. Oh, yes, we most certainly do. Wow. It's goofy to even have this discussion, have all this goofiness, and this is all by design.
Though ultimately blocked on First Amendment grounds and rescinded by President Biden, the fight over CRT at the state level is still in full effect.
The focus on CRT is a way to latch onto a concept that very few people sort of really understand, which sounds kind of scary perhaps to someone not, trained in what it means, and latch onto that as a kind of football in this sort of ongoing fight over, the future of this country with regard to racism.
Okay, stop with the babbling. Listen, people, I'm going to tell y'all what I think. I admire people. I'm fascinated by people. And I can't lie, I'm fascinated by all races of people. I'm fascinated by people in general. People are incredible creatures. But I also think that humans right now, today, are very dysfunctional and crazy and out of their minds. As goofy and brainless as all get up, and it's unbelievable to me, some of the dumb things that we do. Listen, racism is not something, isn't everybody tired of this? For example, white people. I've heard a lot of white people complain about some of the things that black people do, like how we will misconstrue something as racism that's not actually racism. Well, if we have our own country, our own territory, we won't be around for you to hear us complaining about nothing. There's a simple solution. At some point, you should separate two groups. Not saying that there are not blacks and whites who don't get along. Of course there is. I'm not talking about them. The problem is the ones that don't get along, right? Yes. That's the problem. So that's what I'm dealing with. These people need to have the option to have their own territory. Look, give one state to whites, one state to blacks, have the rest of the United States intermingled. You can't tell me that these two groups don't deserve their own state. One state for whites, one state for blacks. That way, whites who want to live in a white world, well, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you minding your business, there's nothing wrong with that. Hell, you can even do business with the black state. Hey, we'll trade, whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why people interpret things like that as hostility towards another group. Ain't nothing hostile about you wanting to live by yourself among your own people. Like I said, I believe people have like energy, culture. A lot of people, it's natural to feel more comfortable around people who you share culture with, identity with. And like I said, I believe there's this entity trying to get rid of identity. They don't want different groups to exist. They want everybody to mix. That way, everybody is nothing and everything at the same time. Easier to control. All right, let's finish this.
As of mid-June 2021, 21 states have introduced bills attempting to restrict the teaching of critical race theory and or impose limits on how race is discussed inside the classroom. And those limits are often vague.
And instructors, educators.
Okay, no. Let's go to the next one. because they get on to some extensive babbling.
Some time right now to bring more context.
Hey, this is much shorter. This is much shorter. Now watch it. This stuff is infuriating. This is not coming from us.
Some time right now to bring more context into the conversation by taking a closer look at what exactly critical race theory is and what it is not. Anthony Hill continues our team coverage.
Critical race theory has become a hot and divisive topic. And with all the misinformation, it's made it more difficult to engage in dialogue and healthy debate on how we educate students from our nation's history to current social disparities. I spoke with several education experts to explain what it is and...
Stop this. See, you see what they're doing? They're just making a flipping spectacle out of including extra information. Just because it's race-related information, they're just making a spectacle out of it, when all they have to do is include the curriculum. If you simply included it without making a flipping spectacle of it, I believe many of the right-wingers who are against it wouldn't mind. I think it's the spectacle that annoys people, and that's by design.
How it would theoretically look in the classroom.
I think there's a good deal of misunderstandings of critical race theory and how it's applied.
So what is critical race theory? Many scholars define it as a framework to help explain how and why racial inequities still exist in our society.
Often people think about racism as individual acts of bias or bigotry, but really CRT helps us understand the ways that racism is a system.
Proponents of critical race theory argue that that system has lasting effects and impacts the lives of people of color today.
Look, man, people, I don't believe that the average person is oblivious to this. Like I said, you essentially teach this in the college courses. So simply include the college curriculum into the high school, into the elementary. History is history, right? Because when you force or present history, you know, with this face, like, oh, critical race, and you giving it a title and all this kind of stuff, it make it seem like a theory. As why are you pushing real history as a theory? Why are you including the word theory in there at all if it's actual history? Why? There are a lot of things I learned outside of the public educational system. I just gave an example. There are several books available. Everybody knows about the Ivan Van Sertima, George G.M. James, the real well-known books. A lot of information. You don't get that information in the mainstream schools. So if you just want to give accurate history, then just include the information. This massive spectacle is, I can't think of any other reason. It's designed to simply upset people and make people uncomfortable. That's what it is. And that has never come from, I don't think. Well, look, there's a lot of us who appreciate this. Yes, we want them to understand, but it just don't make no sense. If it don't have nothing to do, stop trying to take attention away from our check. Reparations. This is all to take attention away from reparations.
We don't.
As if there's some type of reward in people understanding. And people understand. Again, we've been in the information age forever. People are nosy. They're always looking up stuff on the internet and learning things. Stop with this.
I want to just tell certain aspects of history. We want to be able to tell all aspects of history so that our children are coming out of the school systems, K through 12, with a deeper understanding of what society is, what it was, and how to move forward, how we can make it even better.
Critical race theory was started back in the 1970s by legal scholars and activists as a way of examining laws and power structures through the lens of race.
And acknowledge that there are different outcomes for different people, and that perhaps justice is not blind.
Since then, it's made its way into different academic disciplines.
Oh, man. Again, white people are not oblivious to what goes on, to what many of them participate in. They're not oblivious to it. Listen, the white CEO, the white whoever, manager, he's well aware that he hired the white guy over the black guy. If that's the situation, if that's what happened, if it was, even though the black guy was more qualified, they're not dumb. They know what they're doing. Talking about education. And there are many whites who, some of them, they know. Yeah, I got it because I was the white guy. Okay, they've conducted these studies. They've proven this, right? They've done these little demonstrations. The white teacher, they're fully aware of the fact that they give a black student a lower grade for a higher quality paper. That was another study that they conducted where they found that professors in these universities was routinely giving black students lower grades than they should have gotten. But you can't control that. You can't control that. You know, and in general, many white people might be aware that they are more receptive or better receptive to other white people. Maybe other white people's delivery, you know, or the way they speak or whatever. So they might, you know, they might feel white people more than they feel black people. You see? So they might be sort of influenced to give them a greater grade. You know, say like a public speech or whatever. I mean, Lord, stop with this. And look, the fact that it has been funded by these multi-million-dollar industries where these teachers have been paid. I'm telling you, this is a fact.
Sandra,
they've been paid to push this in the schools. They actually uncovered this. What do I do with that? Oh no, I'm gonna find this. Where did I put it? Oh, I think it's right here. Yeah, I've been listening. Because this is too much. Where is it? Is this it? Oh, yeah, listen to this.
To hate others because of their skin color.
Oh.
You're teaching children to hate others because of their skin color.
Critical race theory was once an obscure academic concept. Now, as students head back to school, it's a fixture in the fierce U.S. debate over how to teach children about the country's history and race relations. Conservatives have invoked the...
What do you mean how to teach them about it? Just tell them about it. There's only one way to teach it, isn't it? You just tell them what happened. What are they talking about? I'm not a parent yet. So maybe I lack insight. What are they talking about? How many ways can you teach history other than the way it happened? See, it's just a spectacle. It just don't make no sense to me.
Term to denounce curricula and policies they deem too liberal. This was supposed to be a routine school board meeting in Virginia. Instead, it was pandemonium, as hundreds of parents flooded the auditorium.
Critical race theory is anti-white, and it's not American.
Let's roll back the clock to unpack what's happening. Critical race theory, or CRT, is an approach to studying U.S. policies and institutions that is most often taught in law schools. Law professors in the 70s began exploring how race and racism have shaped American law and society. The theory rests on the premise that racial bias, intentional or not, is baked into U.S. laws and institutions. The term gained a foothold after the murder of George Floyd in May 2020.
Stop with that too, man. People are fully aware. They're not oblivious to this. No. The average person is not oblivious to this. You look around the country and you see almost 100% white police force in every city. No matter how black the city, that police force is mostly white. Is that not true? Isn't that true? Everybody sees that. You don't see white people in white suburbs who have an all-black police department. You don't have that. And then we find out that these police departments are flooded with white supremacist gangs, with bona fide, irrefutable racists, bona fide, head over heels, to the core racists, flooding the police departments. This has been discovered by the FBI has made this information public. You don't think those white supremacists who join the police force are aware that they are white supremacists on the police force? You think you're going to enlighten them by giving them a history lesson, basically explaining to them why they're doing exactly what they're doing? The racists themselves, you think they're oblivious to racism? The cops who spend all day in black neighborhoods rather than white neighborhoods. There have been cops who've gone public and admitted if they wanted to, they could lock up all white people. Focus on the meth addicts. That meth and opioid explosion is primarily with the white population. They could focus on them, focus on the ones who use it, focus on the ones who sell it, and they could fill these prisons with nothing but white people. They could easily do that. But instead, it's black people. And they've already discovered all this, how judges will be harsh on the blacks and all. We all know about all this, man. Stop it. So we not trying to, I want you to understand so that you can feel sorry for us. We want you to feel sorry for us. It's, so much. We've been through so much. Let's hug. Is that the goal? Let's hug. What is that goofball nonsense? That ain't gonna do nothing. Don't listen. With any other group, you would be talking about all the stuff they went through so that everybody would understand why they're being compensated for what they went through. That's the only purpose, to bring this back up to their attention, because they're all aware of it. Nobody's oblivious to the fact of the history of slavery in this country, of Jim Crow in this country. Stop this. Stop this.
Individuals and institutions began grappling with how racism persists in modern-day American society. In September 2020, conservative journalist and researcher Christopher Rufo went on Fox News to decry the anti-bias training happening in federal agencies as an example of critical race theory. Shortly after, President Donald Trump's administration directed federal agencies to cease such training, calling it, quote, divisive, un-American propaganda.
Why did you decide to do that?
They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's the racist.
President Joe Biden has since overturned that executive order. In the year since Trump's executive order...
Now, what is Trump talking about? Is that true? What is he talking about? I got to rewind that. Is that... Now, as far as I've understood, that's not what critical race theory is talking about.
Calling it, quote, divisive, un-American propaganda.
Why did you decide to do that?
They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country.
What is it? What is he talking about? What is he talking about? Do you know how many police units have been created and then dismantled because they were unconstitutional, like I just said, targeting the black community? If you inform of a student or a classroom full of students of that, that's not teaching them that this country is racist. That's just teaching them of the history of the country. So this is the right-wing extremist brainlessness. There's a brainlessness to the right-wingers, and this is it. How they interpret just historical information as racism and teaching them to hate America and hate white people. I've heard some whites say that it's teaching, Tucker Carlson always saying it. Oh, it's just teaching people to hate white people and that white people are inherently evil and what? Now, I don't fully know the curriculum of critical race theory, but they share some of it in some of these news segments, and some of it is, you can tell, is propaganda. That kids book, we might see it here. I think I saved it.
Teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country.
Like, what? Horrible? Now, if that's how you interpret actual history, then you got a serious mental problem. You got a serious mental problem. You got a problem because you scared to face your own dysfunctional behavior, so you'll never fix it. No, you always got to be receptive to the possibility. I mean, look at all the tension and situations that take place, hostility, hostile interactions between the races. So every day there's some new situation that went down. Racism this, racism that. Something going viral. People pulling their hair out about race. It needs to be talked about. What are you talking about? Talking crazy. And if you just talking about sharing actual history that where you're talking about the things that had an impact on us economically, if you call that teaching hate, and so what are you, just a person who avoids acknowledging or history in general, even though it has an effect on today's world as history does? Then that's the sign of a lunatic right there. And this guy was the president. Now, granted, operationally, he was a better president than Joe Biden. You know, in general, the Republicans, I'm not as threatened by the Republicans as I am by the Democrats. The Democrats seem more dangerous for black people. They seem more dangerous for black people. Trump didn't implement any anti-black policies, but he did babble on and say a bunch of nonsense.
Of critical race theory. Shortly after, President Donald Trump's administration directed federal agencies to cease such training, calling it, quote, divisive, un-American propaganda.
Why did you decide to do that?
They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's racist.
President Joe Biden has since overturned that executive order. In the year since Trump's executive order, conservative politicians, parents, and right-wing media have deployed the term to denounce discussions of racism, white privilege, or diversity initiatives in U.S. public schools. Remember that school being bombarded by parents in Virginia? Scenes like this happened across the country.
My youngest looks very white, so they would look at her and say, "You are an oppressor." I don't see how that's productive. I don't see how it's accurate, and I don't see how it's not gonna.
An oppressor? What? What is he talking about? Is that what critical race theory teaches? That every single white person, every single white American is an oppressor? Is that what they teach? I don't know. That's a genuine question. You're an oppressor. Okay. Look, like I said, it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. A certain group had control over a country. The other group was subjugated. So, to this day, the power is still in primarily their possession. The ownership of things, having control and say so over things. They're still the most powerful group in this country with control of all the resources. That's not rocket science. Stop with this, man. Stop with this. People, I can't take this. Stop acting like this is, oh, we don't want to face that. And if... Okay, let's finish this.
By parents in Virginia, scenes like this happened across the country.
My youngest looks very white, so they would look at her and say, "You are an oppressor." I don't see how that's productive. I don't see how it's accurate, and I don't see how it's not.
It's not about telling them that they're an oppressor. Why would you even think to do that? This is if that's what this is about. For what? What's the purpose? What's the purpose? No. For what? For an emotion. We don't want no emotion. We want a check. That's justice. A check is justice. That's what we're owed. It's justice. If we want land, maybe we can buy land. And you want a black state, go buy your own black state. But we need to have the option to live under the governing body of our own group. That's just the basic freedom that people should have. They should have the option to govern themselves the way they see fit. That's a basic freedom. Okay, a lot of black people, they're not even in touch on how they, I can't co-sign with continuing to exist in a racist society because it's unhealthy for your offspring. It messes up their brain. It literally turns them into crazy individuals. Black kids. Yeah, it messes them up. They need to see the adults in control of themselves. They need to see that. So I don't know what they're talking about. Again, that's why I say this did not come from us. This is more, and what is this? Listen to this.
Would you not teach?
Wait a minute.
Move further apart.
Would you not teach what happened during World War I or World War II or the American Revolution? No, you wouldn't. We need critical race theory because we need real history.
You see what I mean? Making us a spectacle out of it. That seems like by design. That's coming from these multi-billion-dollar organizations that are behind the pushing of this critical race theory. Now, it looks like I may have lost the video where they're talking about it. Now, listen to this.
The whole purpose of critical...
Not this. Listen to this. This is crazy right here.
Convenient Minority. That is the name of a new book by our next guest, and how author Kenny Xu refers to Asian Americans. As an Asian American himself, Xu explains how he's considered to be an inconvenient minority to the critical race theory narrative. Let's bring in author Kenny Xu. He's also the president of Color Us United. Kenny, great to see you today. You said in an interview with FoxNews.com, Asian Americans prove that critical race theory is not true, cannot be true. Make that case.
Okay, now that's a tricky question. Is critical race theory true? Can there be some things about it that's true and some things not? Don't let people frame stuff like this. Okay, so he's already framed the question. He's already set it up in a way where he can say, oh yeah, it's all not true, and he gave this guy an opportunity to frame what it is. I don't trust that. I don't trust that.
Be true. Make that case.
Well, critical race theory asserts, and I talk about this in my book, An Inconvenient Minority, but critical race theory asserts that the world in America is divided into a racial caste system, whites on the top, blacks on the bottom, but they have no idea what to do with Asian Americans, because Asian Americans are a minority. You know, they have been discriminated against in this country, and yet they succeed and they achieve.
Right there. Right there. Asian Americans came by choice, and they were not generationally robbed. Y'all, stop comparing us to other groups. Generation after generation, people were slaves their entire life. And it was restricted against one race, black people. You can't compare yourself or your group with us. Nobody's saying that we can't achieve. And what is achieving? Is that earning a comfortable living? Black Americans been doing that for as long as America has been here. We've achieved several things. Making money ain't nothing to us. What is you talking about? There's some black people who succeed and some who don't. Just like there are some Asians who succeed and some who don't. The Asians who don't succeed obviously are not migrating to the United States. And some of them are because they get so many benefits. But if you look at the African Americans, the black Americans in other countries, they're balling as well. There's a very low percentage of them that are failures. Basically, none of them are failures. If they're overseas balling somewhere, they finance their way to live in another country. Yeah, virtually every single one gonna have money. They're gonna be successful, what you goofballs call successful. So it's the same scenario. You comparing immigrants who come over here who clearly have to have proven to have access to some type of fund somewhere to finance their way to get over here or something. Then you get all these benefits once you get over here that we fought for. United States did want a grant. And you can't compare yourself to us. Stop this. Stop this. So I don't know how well his book is selling, but it shouldn't be selling at all.
You know, they have been discriminated against in this country, and yet they succeed and they achieve. And that I think inconveniences the critical race theory narrative today, and that's why I wrote this book.
You make the argument that...
What's the critical race theory that blacks can't achieve whatever achieve is? People acting like making money is something no black person has done. Like, what are y'all talking about? The average black person not going around saying this. This is not our narrative. That old black people can't achieve. Shut up, man. That's not coming from us. I just don't hear black people saying stuff like that. We all aware we can achieve that. We have the opportunity to make us, a lot of money. That ain't nothing to us. We talking about a debt, man. A debt. White America currently is still benefiting from our ancestors' labor in the form of being in control of all the resources, being the owners of everything. We were given nothing. We were promised something, given nothing. After generations upon generations of labor being robbed from us and our invention, so on and so forth. The number of black towns across this country that have been destroyed, flooded, targeted by the same government that exists today. You can't compare us to no other groups. Stop with this. This is madness. Week after week, I listen to a lot of different content creators, and I just can't take it no more. People, and it seems like it's getting more complex than it should be.
If America is systemically racist, as many proponents of critical race theory believe, how is it that Asian Americans have flourished and in many cases overtaken whites in terms of level of education and socioeconomic status? So
this is a straw man argument. This is a straw man argument. Now I want y'all to hear this question again.
Taken whites in terms of systemically racist, as many. You make the argument that if America is systemically racist, as many proponents of critical race theory believe, how is it that Asian Americans have flourished and in many cases overtaken whites in terms of level of education and socioeconomic status?
Now that is an offensive question. That is an offensive question. Even though Asians have faced discrimination, you even have Asians online talking about how Asians were incentivized to come over here to undermine Black Americans so that they can get the jobs that they refused to give the Black Americans. There are Asian people going over that very history right here online. Stop comparing us. You've never had the type of hostility that you have towards Black Americans, never had that type of hostility towards any other ethnic group. Yeah, you might have been had an attitude towards them somewhat. Yeah, they may have not been white, been discriminated against, but we always been public enemy number one. Stop playing dumb. You even have the documents that prove that the goal was to undermine Black Americans and give the jobs to immigrants, which is an evil practice. And I don't want to even have a discussion about it unless we talking about that's the reason why you cutting this check. I don't want to go over history just to be going over it just to make white people feel guilty. It ain't much to understand, and it's pretty simple. We are owed a debt. No other group was generationally robbed like that. You had more of an incentive to be vile and wicked towards Black Americans because you had to rob them. You had to make them feel like it was their place to be subjugated, and you started to get off on just being in control and having dominance over another group, having power over another group. That's what it really boils down to. Some sickos who just get off on having power and authority over another group and having the ability to impact their quality of life. Okay, I don't even want to have a discussion about it. Racism is not something that will prevent every Black person from having a good job. What are you talking about? When we talk about racism, that's not what we're even talking about. As far as racism, we're talking about mainly how our kids are taught or not taught in these school systems, institutional things. How the preference for whiteness, the greater appreciation for whiteness, it gives them certain benefits. It gives them certain benefits. Okay. It's not rocket science. Nobody is saying that you can't succeed. I don't understand this argument. That we supposedly, that our argument, the black people's argument, is that under racism, you can't live, you can't get a job, you can't make $100,000 a year. Of course you can.
America.
It just might be harder for you to get a job like that and keep it. Harder for you to stay in business, especially when they having all these injunctions and all these different little sneaky tactics trying to put you out of business constantly. So many businesses, black businesses, have been sabotaged. Could have been booming today, multi-million-dollar businesses that could have employed all kinds of black people. Maybe me. The economic destruction of black people probably has touched economically every black person alive today. Every black family today. Had none of our businesses been sabotaged, would be a little different, because there would be a lot of things that are offered by those companies that probably wouldn't be offered by the other businesses. You already saw examples of that with the blacks with the EMS, where they had the people, the nurses and the doctors who operate on you while you're in the vehicle on the way to the hospital, as soon as you get there, as soon as they get there, right? A bunch of different ideas might flourish among black Americans, and they'll be the primary beneficiaries. See, integration killed all the black Wall Streets all across the country, just destroyed them. And that's what hurt us economically. To be honest with you, it was integration. Segregation economically was beneficial for blacks. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, man, they had some of the most harsh Jim Crow laws in the country. That was a big reason why it was so successful. They were not going to tolerate you, no Negro, coming up in their business or nothing. You had to get your own everything. Harsh Jim Crow laws in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that is what sparked their success. Their money circulated among themselves. That's a freedom all groups should have, to be able to benefit financially from their own dollars and inventions. All right? And we lost that. We lost that. And nobody gonna tell me that has affected all of us. All of us. Even if only not in the form of motivation of seeing such a successful black district where they calling it Negro Wall Street. Are you kidding? We're owed a debt. I don't want to go over all this information unless you're talking about the debt that we're owed.
Is systemically racist, as many proponents of critical race theory believe. How is it that Asian Americans have flourished and in many cases overtaken whites in terms of level of education and socioeconomic status? So how is it? How is it that Asian Americans flourish in this country?
That's stupid. And that's a trick question. Don't compare the average black person in America with Asian immigrants. You can do the same thing with black Americans. If you compare the level of education of the average black American who moves out of the United States, they are going to surpass, on average, the average person in China. You goofball. You comparing an entire population of people to the immigrants, the successful class of another group. Stop with this nonsense. People, this is what I'm talking about. I can't take this no more. This is that Twilight Zone I be talking about. Do you understand how tricky of a question that is? Don't compare black Americans to no immigrants. Every immigrant group is more, black American immigrant groups are more successful than the entire body of black Americans in America, you goofball. You're making these goofy, stupid arguments. I can't believe these goofball arguments circulate in the mainstream here in the United States. Can't believe it. This should have been shut down a long time ago. Again, stop comparing Black Americans to the immigrants of another group. I don't care if they're Russian immigrants. I don't care if they're Asian immigrants. They came by choice. They were not generationally robbed. Why am I trying to explain this?
Whites in terms of level of education and socioeconomic status. So how is it? How is it that Asian Americans flourish in this country?
It has to do with culture. You know, Asian Americans study twice as many hours as the average American. Today, we always talk about the tiger.
Shut up with that stupid study. Listen, ain't nobody ever came in my house and timed how long I study. Who conducted that study? Where? How? How they? Oh, they went around and asked how long people study. Of some small percentage of people that's supposed to represent the whole entire population. Get out of here, man. You're comparing the immigrant group, an immigrant group, regardless of what group it is. Don't even have to be Asian. If they can afford to leave their country or can afford to get here and enjoy a lot of these benefits that immigrants get on their feet, they're now considered successful. That's what they're calling successful. What they're calling successful is getting a job and being able to pay your bills. That's all they're talking about. They're not measuring the fact that they all driving Mercedes Benzes or whatever. Talking about people who moving over here, business incentives. You comparing the business. No, compare the immigrants with Black American business class, with our business class. And then you can have a discussion. You see what I'm saying? These people just goofy, man.
Mother, you know, that was Amy Chua's famous book. But it's not just tiger mother parenting. It's also strong two-parent family structures. It's a strong value on education. It's a love for hard work and for meritocracy. And that's at stake with critical race theory, because critical race theory is anti-meritocracy.
And see, this is sinister. The way they sort of disrespect the breaking up of Black families and compare themselves, people whose government never systematically broken up their families and targeted their families to be dismantled as a whole, comparing the immigrant class families to the entire population of Black people. That's brainless and sinister within itself and very disrespectful. And you were fully aware of that.
It believes that merit is racist. So, if policies like Harvard's discrimination against Asian Americans are allowed, guess who loses out? Well, it's...
You see, this is a problem. We got issues we need to deal with. See, that's a problem. That's what he's talking about. Broken families. You know what? we need some healing. That's why we need our own nation. And that's why we need that check. Okay? I'm not going to have no back and forth talking about, word for word, point for point, because these are all goofy points and these arguments are in bad faith.
Policies like Harvard's discrimination against Asian Americans are allowed. Guess who loses out? Well, it's the hardworking Asian Americans that work so hard to get their spot.
Which brings me to my next point, because we now see the emergence, Harvard and other places, of attempts to limit Asian American enrollment in some of these prestigious educational institutions. That would appear to be the very definition of systemic racism, to limit the number of people who can
stop with this. These racists and these white supremacist organizations. I frequent their social media. They're always, many of them consider Asians their brethren, their Aryan brethren. Many of them consider it. At the very least, the scientists, the mainstream scientists, have come public and said that both Caucasians and Asians are related genetically. That all people other than blacks are related, are like cousins genetically. This is what their scientists said, not me. I'm telling you what their scientists have said. They've said that all races of people, aside from black people, the nappy-headed black person, they share common ancestry. Okay, they've never ever been as hostile against an immigrant group as they have been. They don't sabotage their businesses. They don't target Asian businesses for destruction. They've never systematically done that. I mean, they literally drop bombs on our businesses. Like, what is we even talking about? What is we talking about? And this is insulting and disrespectful to even have this discussion. And what are we having it for if it ain't about you ain't cutting the check? No better understanding?
In on a merit-based program in order to keep up levels of enrollment of other people.
You know, I analyzed 90,000 pages of Harvard admissions data. And stretching back for 30 years, Asian Americans have been kept at a cap at admissions between 15 and 18% of the student body. That has only recently changed. And, you know, Harvard's own estimate said that if Asians were not discriminated against, they would be 43% of the student body. Now, people are saying, well, is that too many Asians? Well, I say, I'm indignant at that claim. I'm indignant at the claim that Asians are all the same kind of person, they're all the same kind of faceless, test-taking robot with no personality. We have to look past race in this country. And I wrote this book, hopefully, to heal America and to bring Americans together in service of meritocracy.
So I asked Vivek Ramaswamy this question yesterday.
Bring us together. Stop with that. Stop with that. Bring us together. Ain't nothing wrong with our relationship. I mean, aside from the lunatics. And what we gonna do when we get together? We gonna sing a song? Kumbaya? Huh? Some goofy nonsense, some pointless, purposeless nonsense? You think I want to sing a song? No, I want you to repay the debt which you did to my ancestors. Generation upon generation upon generation, you flipping a slave your whole life. You did that for multiple generations. That was evil. And that was inhumane. That destroyed an entire people. It had an effect on the life of an entire population of people. Stop playing dumb. You know this. I don't like going over this and sounding like some type of reparations minister. It is because y'all playing dumb and it's so often that I have to say something about it. Stop with this. Lord, did we have this lecture and drawn out discussion when these other groups got their reparations? Did we? Did we go over how we feel? Oh, let's talk about emotions. Oh, let's come together, kumbaya. Y'all didn't talk about all that. You just, boom, here's the money. Such and such billion. Even with immigrants, such and such trillion, billion, trillion, billion here. You reparations, you black Americans. Oh no, you want a handout. And you doing that to the most robbed people ever in recorded history. You got this attitude of, no, you want a handout. Oh no, you just being lazy. Oh, you want somebody to give you something for nothing. You doing that to the most economically robbed people ever in recorded history. By far. That's disrespectful. And that's why we deserve our own territory to be away from sick individuals like you who look at our history like that. F you, lunatics. Now let's finish this.
And let me ask you as well. Yeah. Have you personally experienced racism in this country? And what did you do to keep it in perspective?
Well, I have to say, America has been very good to me. Yes, I've experienced racism, especially...
America has been good to us. Black Americans love America. We don't want to live nowhere else. Trust me on that. We love this country. We built this country. We contributed heavily to the culture of this country. The music, sure enough. You think we don't appreciate America? Stop with that. The goofy talking points. Goofy right-wing talking points. Talking like we're anti-American. Nothing anti-American about us. Asking for what's owed to us. Something you know full well is owed to us. Stop playing dumb. See, y'all some extremely disrespectful, vile human beings to be talking like this.
You know, from the Ivy Leagues, when they judge Asian Americans as low personalities, that's what Harvard does. But you know what? America has been very good to me, and America has been good to every person in every of this country. One of the things in my book that I talk about is this guy.
Well, America didn't generationally rob nobody but us. So what is you talking about? Millions of black families generationally robbed economically can't enjoy the fruits of their labor, of a lifetime of labor. But their slave masters do get the benefit and pass that generational wealth down to their offspring. Don't compare us to no other groups, man. That's disrespectful.
A guy named Bin Vo, he's a Vietnamese American. He came to this country from Vietnam, and he was with the instant he landed here, a police officer picked him up and sent him home, and that was an act of charity that he could not find in his home country. That's the goodness of America, and I want to highlight that.
Interesting. Kenny Xu, the book is...
What? You goofball. So a cop gave a guy a ride home. What, you think black people won't admit that a cop can do something nice for them? I've had cops do nice stuff for me. I'm a licensed driver. I keep insurance. I keep my tags up to date. I've been pulled over for speeding. But once they saw I was a licensed driver with a clean record, let me go with a warning. A couple of those times, my insurance had overlapped. I wasn't even insured. But we didn't find all that out. He was just satisfied that I was a licensed driver, the car was in my name, and I didn't have a police record. That was a cool thing to do. He could have easily asked, let me see your proof of insurance. Some cops will do that. And black Americans don't have no problem admitting stuff like that. Stop acting like we some type of crazy lunatic aliens who say and do dumb stuff. Y'all, you see, you having this goofy conversation to avoid talking about this check that we owed. That's long overdue. Long overdue. And we need more no-nonsense dialogue and commentary on reparations. It's not an attack on other groups. And again, other groups don't talk about, oh, my children shouldn't have to pay black people, black Americans. And again, nobody complained about our tax dollars paying for other people's reparations. Our tax dollars have gone to other people's reparations. And I've been a taxpayer for over 2 decades, long over 2 decades, closer to 30 years I've been working. So stop with that. And most likely, like I said, it would most likely boost the economy. Boost the economy. Because there would be a lot of businesses created. A lot of businesses created. And a lot of money spent. This ain't gonna hurt nobody and their family. What are you talking about? This is an injustice. And this denial of our reparations is nothing more than slavery type of racism itself. That's like a modern way of trying to continue to treat us like slaves. That is irrefutable. That's a modern way to continue to treat us like slaves. We will not be really treated like humans until we are given that check. Okay? You call me crazy, you call me whatever. It's the right thing to do. That's irrefutable. Right? Now, somebody in the chat room said, race entitles you to nothing. Race convicts you of nothing. Sharing the race of a victim does not make you a victim. Sharing the race of a villain does not make you a villain. Now notice, other groups didn't get that lecture when they got their reparations, did they? Oh, just because you're Japanese, oh, just because you're Jewish, oh, just because you're Indian, Native American, Cherokee, whatever, that doesn't entitle you to anything. You were not the one taken off the boat. You know what? That argument is almost like saying that the slave of the late 1800s is not the same as the slaves that first arrived on the shores. You didn't personally have your language stripped from you, so you didn't go through anything. As if Black Americans economically today, our position economically has nothing to do with very recent history. 1900s. That was basically an economic attack. The attack on these black towns, it was an attack on black people's economy, because we essentially had a separate economy with Jim Crow laws. That's why so many Black Wall Streets popped up all over the place. Basically had our own economy. It was about to go into business with entire countries, entire governments, business-wise. It wasn't an emotional tirade on part of the government. It wasn't that. Just like, oh, I hate black people. No, it was an economic attack. A great deal of the people lynched were business owners. It's not just the everyday people. They dropped bombs from the sky on businesses. They did all of this to American citizens who's still alive today, whose children still alive today, grandchildren still alive today. That Black Wall Street started around the 1920s. If they had been allowed to thrive, they would have thrived now for around 100 years. You know how much a business can grow in 100 years? How many people they can employ? How many people can grow off that business? We could have flourished economically. And I believe it would have affected everybody, all of our life in some way. I'm saying this is not a discussion to have. We have a specific group of people, whether you identify them by race or not, however you identify them. If they're identifiable, don't give me no race lecture. I don't want no race lecture. I could have inherited a house. I could have inherited wealth. I could have gotten opportunities in some flourishing black business that wasn't bombed, and all kinds of things. They robbed us of an entire world. Our government, the same government we got now. Don't tell me a whole government goes after people like that and then they don't owe them nothing, but they give stuff to other people. Stop. Now let's put an end to this video. for it stretch into 2 hours. I think this is a no-brainer. Yes, I support reparations. That is all for this live stream. I will see you on the next.